So she actually puts this liqueur in the tiramisu, which makes it much more authentic than what is offered throughout Khon Kaen and actually throughout Bangkok. Folks who have been lucky enough to visit Paris will probably visit three sites above all else. First, the Eiffel Tower, then the Champs-Élysées, and of course, the Louvre. Yes, I know there's plenty of other places to see in Paris, for example, like the Pompidou or the Palace at Versailles. But the Louvre, to me, is mandatory for anyone who appreciates fine art. However, if you cross the river and walk just a couple of blocks, you'll arrive at my favorite museum, actually, and that's the Musée d'Orsay. The 18th century French Impressionist paintings shown here serves as a counterpoint to the traditional works displayed at the Louvre. And like anything introduced to Paris during that period of time, it wasn't always embraced immediately. Heck, even the Eiffel Tower, when it was first introduced, so offended many of Frenchmen,'s taste that it is said that Monsieur Guy de Maupassant, author of the famous story The Necklace, that guy, he dined in the restaurant inside the tower itself every single day because it was the one place in the city that he didn't actually have to look at the tower. Such an eyesore as it was to him. Likewise, Impressionism offended much of the French bourgeoisie due to many of the works by these Impressionist artists at the time being considered kind of crude, unfinished works. The brushstrokes were really, they were thick and crude. The often mundane subject matter offended people as well. And they thought that the Impressionist painters kind of had a disregard for artistic norms. I'd say, yeah. The art snobs at the time favored paintings that depicted historical and mythical content, scenes with drama and context built into them. But the scenes painted by Impressionists were more like a flash in the pan, a slice in time, like a photo taken at any random moment, like, say a walk in the park or a stroll through a garden. Basically, mundane moments were depicted, and some folks just weren't having it, y'all. They just weren't having it. Monet, Cézanne, Renoir, many painters of this class found their masterpieces rejected for exhibition in famous galleries. Ergo, they created their own. And in doing so, gave birth to their own scene and changed the art world and left their mark that way. These Impressionist painters made their way into the modern psyche, and you're just as likely going to hear one of their names spoken as you would say Da Vinci or Michelangelo. Of all the Impressionist painters that came out during that movement, I would say that probably Claude Monet received the most attention by art students when I was growing up. I'd say like 7 out of 10 students in my art class knew who Monet was, and I would say the majority of those liked him a lot and would consider him one of their top artists. I found the paintings kind of boring. I'm not saying they're not masterpieces, I wouldn't know, they just weren't my thing. But Monet did stand out, and I did like some of his works quite a lot. I figured I would one day walk into a themed bar or restaurant based off of some well-known artist. I actually pictured myself when I was younger, like walking into an H.R. Giger themed bar or a Salvador Dali one. It never, and I mean never, dawned on me that I would walk into a cafe themed on Claude Monet in a tiny Isan town 35 minutes outside of Khon Kaen. But here I am. It's a small world. It's a wondrous world. Now I bet those snobby French art critics of the 1800s would not have figured that, would they? That the Impressionist works would make it all the way out here in the exotic East. The cafe is called Monet Coffee, and you can find it just past downtown Fang on the west side of Khon Kaen, about 35 minutes drive on Highway 12 or Maliwan Road. It could take up to 45 minutes depending on the traffic conditions. The Claude Monet theme is a bit muted once you go into the actual cafe itself. Perhaps out of lack of familiarity, though I don't think that's what's going on here. Perhaps due to the resources available, though I don't think that's what's going on either. Or preferring perhaps understated design elements, and that's what I think is going on. But the place does stand out on the roadside, and I had to stop and take a look. The owner is friendly, bakes her own cookies at the place, and she can speak English. There are books by Monet and other artists and works of literature displayed, mostly for effect, I suppose. The coffee was rich and buttery, and the cheesecake was out of this world. The owner of the establishment makes the sweets herself, and she takes care to use real cream and imported ingredients. I'm not being hyperbolic here. This was probably the best blueberry cheesecake I've had in Thailand. She tells me that her tiramisu is her signature dessert, and although she didn't make it that day, she explained that she actually uses coffee liqueur in the dish. She takes great pride describing and explaining how she prepares these desserts, by the way. She was friendly, conversational, and attentive without being overbearing or intrusive. You know, sometimes a guy just wants to escape conversation and disappear into a book. She's the kind of person who can read a room. She allowed me to go further into her private part of the property to film her family vegetable garden and surrounding farmland. She even told me great places to film from to help get better scenes. It was nice to see solar panels on top of her coffee shop, by the way, and a rural farm that was kept neat and tidy. Not just the places that were on display throughout the grounds, like for the business, but like places that were hidden were kept tidy. I wonder if she lived in Europe before and brought some of those tastes back with her. I'm not sure. I do know she's created something really unique and wonderful out here. Today I just needed to get out of the house. I just needed to be alone for a bit, to do some reading and deal with some anxiety. I'm a hot mess, but a hot mess with a craving for a nice cup of joe. And Monet Coffee serves up a nice, rich, flavorful cup of coffee, accompanied by homemade desserts made with pride and great attention to detail. The location is unusual, being quite a ways outside of downtown, but the area past Ban Phang is beautiful. Now, this is part of Ban Phang village, but it's really on the outskirts of the village as you're headed towards Nam Pong National Park, but it's right there off the highway. Monet Coffee. If you're headed towards the park, stop by, have a nice cup of coffee. Show those 18th century bourgeoisie critics that ya burnt. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Once again, I don't know what you're going through during this holiday season, but I love you. I really appreciate you watching this video, and I wish you all the best in the world. Have a happy holidays and a happy new year. See you next time.